Today I'm super excited to welcome one of our esteemed guests on the podcast. And please join me in welcoming Rand. Rand is the founder. He used to be the founder at Moz, and he's agreed to join us on the podcast tonight. Rand, welcome on board, and look forward to have a chat with you. Please, Rand. So why don't we begin with a quick description of yourself, and then we'll get on to the podcast. Rand, please, over to you.
Oh, sure. First, Avlesh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks to the team at WebEngage. I started a company called Moz here in the United States in Seattle, Washington. Initially, that was a consulting services business that I did with my mom, Jillian, and then it evolved into a software company, which I ran for 7 years as CEO. I stepped down and left that company a couple of years ago and started a new company called SparkToro, which is in market research and audience intelligence software, also a SaaS business, so similar to WebEngage and like a lot of your listeners, but different than the SEO software business. And I wrote a book called Lost and Founder, which I know you folks read, and that is very flattering and humbling to me. And I do a lot of speaking, traveling, writing about a lot of topics relevant to the web marketing world.
Absolutely, Rand. Everybody knows about you. You need no introduction. We had to do it to fit it into the format. But no, thanks for joining us. This is absolutely incredible. Rand, I would like to begin with, WebEngage is an Indian company, and a lot of listeners on the podcast would be from this side of the world. And one of the things that I really admire about how you went about building Moz and each company that you've been associated with is to double down on your own personal branding as one of the means to get your quick distribution. And I'm pretty confident that also helped with your own fundraise in those journeys too, which is another topic. We'll take that up separately. But I wanted to hear from you for our audience how important it is to work on your personal branding, and what does it take? I think the larger question is, what does it take for you to build a brand for yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say a few things on this topic. One is, I don't think it's necessary. I think it can be helpful. I think it's right for some entrepreneurs to personally brand build. I think for others, it is just fine. And we can see hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of successful businesses and organizations where the founder and the CEO are behind the scenes, right? They're not out in front of the business. They're not sort of well known or well covered. And that's businesses of all sizes. So clearly it's not required, but yes, I have personally found it very helpful. I think that's because Moz started as a blog, right? So before there was any company or business, there was this written, regularly updated content series, and that generated the interest that eventually became our customer base for our consulting business, and then the customer base for our software business. So for us, yes, it was hugely important. It was hugely valuable. And for me, obviously, personal brand building came about through content marketing. But we can see many other folks, especially in this age of influencer marketing, where it's primarily it's less content driven and more personality driven, right? I don't think people are particularly actually interested in Rand Fishkin. Yeah. They're interested in, what does he write and say? How can he help my business? How can his content help me to be a better marketer? And if I have any personal brand cachet, that is because of the educational work that I've done to help other people, right? And that's very different from, oh, I like Rand because his face is funny and he's on YouTube, or he's on TikTok every day, or whatever it is, right? Those are very different kinds of personal branding. And some CEOs do fine with that as well. Yeah. I think in the software as a service world, yeah, and in the marketing world, it is extremely helpful to be helpful and kind to other people, and education is a great way to do that. And as a result, personal branding tends to work pretty well.
Understood. Okay. I'll circle back to this question, but let me understand a little bit about Moz as a service. Who typically were your customers, Rand? Would you call it like mostly mid-market customers, SMB customers? Was it catering to the enterprise? Who was your typical customer at Moz?
Yeah, Moz was wild because at least, let's see, when I left, Moz had somewhere around 30,000 paying customers, probably a good 1 to 200 of the Fortune 500 were, so enterprises, but they paid us, $100 a month or $200 a month, right? And small and medium businesses, right? Very, very small, tiny local businesses were often paying $50 to $100 a year or $200 a year for Moz Local, right? Which was designed for small local businesses. And then tons and tons of agencies and consultants and mid-market businesses. So Moz served pretty much everyone. If you needed to do SEO, you wanted rankings, Moz served you. And, that makes for a complex type of marketing. But I will say it's pretty helpful to do personal branding and to do content marketing because those both serve all of those sectors.
Understood. Fair point. And that was my follow-on question. I guess you have answered already. But you think that even in businesses which are catering, let's say, to the mid-market or larger enterprises, you think content as a marketing channel is something that founders should focus on?
Absolutely. I think that, let's see, I would not say it is the only way to succeed, but I think if you can be great at it, right? If you have a way that you can do content that is unique and uniquely valuable from what everyone else offers in the field, that's better and more interesting than your competitions. In many, what I found is that in many business sectors where enterprise sales or serving enterprises, serving big businesses, is the way things go, there are very few, if not no, great content marketers. And so the opportunity is there because if you can build a content marketing brand, it opens up the sales channel in a wonderful way, right? It's way, way easier. Avlesh, if you and I build a business and we're serving primarily, let's say 500 employees and up, 1,000 employees and up, big businesses, it is way easier to get on the phone or to write an email to the CTO, the CMO, the CEO of those companies and get a response if they already have heard of us, right? If they know who we are, they're like, oh yeah, I've listened to you guys on a podcast. I've heard you talking on your YouTube videos. I actually went to one of your events. Whatever it is, right? If they have heard of you, the chances of a real response from the sales team or from the executives is just much bigger.
You're right. You're absolutely right, Rand. And I think there's something that a lot of entrepreneurs that I personally also interact or advise, they acknowledge and they're really trying hard to do this. I think where they're struggling, Rand, is distribution.
Oh, sure.
Right? You write content and I know it's becoming increasingly harder. 10 years ago, I knew I was a nobody programmer, right? 10 years ago. And for all it took for me was I was working at a local listings product, right? So something like a Yelp in India. And, for me, tweaking a few things here and there and making the organic, distribution grow to building organic traffic by tweaking a few things here and there in code was very easy to bring out discovery, of the content that we were generating, which was all dynamite. But building SEO, right, quote unquote, was much more easier 10 years ago, or maybe earlier. It's becoming harder and harder, to date. We struggle. We generate a lot of content. Even at WebEngage, we generate a lot of content, some very good quality content. But discovery, I wish one could solve for it. It's becoming very, very hard. Would love to learn from you. Do you see a change in how it was, or it's mostly perceived on this side of the world?
No, that's true in every country, every language that I've visited or worked in. And that is because of, I think there's really three drivers of that. One, the demand from the expectation from consumers of content has become much higher. And that is because, right, that's because of number two, there are way more people producing very high grade content, right? Extraordinarily, exceptionally good content. And three, there is not, unlike the first, say, 15, 20 years of the internet, where you had this exponential rise in the number of eyeballs available, and the number of distribution channels, was more consistently going up, not exponentially, but consistently going up. The quantity of eyeballs is plateauing a little bit, because at least in, I would say in the West, right, in Europe and the US and a lot of parts of the Americas, internet adoption, number of pages visited per month per user is not going up. It's pretty much flat at this point. There's not a ton of new users coming online. That's less true in Southeast Asia, right? Southeast Asia still has a ton more people coming online all the time. But if you're talking about serving businesses, they're online, right? They're already there. And so you have these platforms that have consolidated, right? Essentially Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, right? Weibo, a few others, right? Who have basically consolidated all of the attention. They own the distribution channels now, which means, hey, you got to play their game, and everybody's competing on the same platforms now, right?
I don't know how, you're right. And I don't know how true this is, but it turns out, and this is all again, more conspiracy theories than actual facts, you can't establish. But, they say that Google and Facebook, they are disincentivizing you for your organic growth by making you pay them so that your inorganic discovery is much better than your organic discovery.
Right.
And I just in terms of sheer volume, if nothing else. And the funny thing with this side of the world is that there's so much volume. Translates into no business. That's absolutely another thing. But at least they can create this this whole volume story for you, right? As a channel of distribution, which is very easy to fall for. When you are responsible for marketing in these companies, very easy to fall for, because it seems like very easy volume. You pay a little and then there's so much volume. And I don't know how much of that is true, but cut to chase, the problem today, most of these companies, I see them struggling with their distribution rather than content creation, which was a problem. If you asked me 5 years ago, most of these people had no clue about what to write, and how to go about it. And not that problem is solved; it's gotten better, but distribution is becoming harder and harder. And you're right. We are all becoming slaves to some of these platforms, and we'll have to play. We'll have to play their game, which is what it seems like. But yeah, I guess the opportunity to solve for distribution of content, to amplify your message today, to me seems like a very large opportunity. I don't know how someone is going to solve for it, but in this side of the world, that's one big problem that every company is facing. All entrepreneurs are facing. Anyways, getting to the next set of questions that I have for you, Ran. How different was it for you scaling Moz from, let's say, I know 0 to 1 must have been hard, and we have all read that in your book. Please throw some insights on that. The part that I'm very curious about is how hard or easy was it after that? How was the 1 to 10 phase? If you want to break it down to 1 to 5, 5 to 10, subsequently, would love to learn about those phases and how were those different from each other? Was there things that you did differently? What were the learnings and insights from that? Would love to know about that journey.
Yeah, I actually found, I don't know that I'd be able to categorize a lot of stages. I think there's sort of the way I'd break it down is probably 0 to 20, 20 to about 75, and then bigger than that, right? And those are essentially, those buckets I describe them that way because, or I'd categorize them that way because in the very early days, we were extremely scrappy, didn't have a lot of budget or revenue or scale. We also, our ambitions were generally smaller, right? Just getting profitability and making a little bit more money and getting some clients or customers was great for us, right? That was fantastic. Oh my God, look at
Hope
that.
you
We
all start that way.
made $5,000, right? Like, oh my God, it's incredible. We made payroll. That's a huge win. And then, right, the next stage after that was this sort of growth, but I would call it very comfortable, relatively organic growth. Moz did raise $1.1 million, and we sort of used that to build some of our early technology and launch, but that got us to about maybe 12 or 15 employees. And then we grew fairly steadily, right? Maybe 2 or 3 new people every quarter, every 6 months for another 5 or 6 years until we were at about 60, 70. And that's when we started doing inorganic growth. We raised a round of financing that was $18 million. We tried to grow very, very fast to 150, 200 people. We were spending ahead of revenue coming in. The rate of new hires was extraordinary. And that's when a lot of the systems that we had built broke down. We tried to build new ones. We had no idea what we were doing. A lot of cultural stuff became very challenging. Some of it fell apart entirely. Much of the early team started leaving, right? All those kinds of challenges. And I would say, to be honest with you, I don't think that the challenge is in raw number of people, so much so as speed of adding new people to the team.
I
So
totally
my advice for founders generally is to be a little slower and more deliberate in adding new people to the team, and to be a little more organic in your growth than inorganic. I think that actually, ironically, it makes growth easier.
I know. It's always a difficult one. You raise capital, and I think the mandate always is to just go faster than you could. And I
Yeah.
know it's a difficult one for founders. You know it. You've been there. You've done that. It's always a difficult path to tread. But yeah, I was largely in setting the context in terms of absolute revenue, not number of people.
Yeah, and revenue ties to those pretty cleanly for
Right?
us.
Metric, yeah. Well, not in this part of the world. People are cheap, so you tend to hire a lot.
Okay, yeah.
In this part of the world, well, not necessarily in other departments now. India had this massive cost advantage earlier, but we have borrowed all our cost structures from the Americas now. So we are as expensive as American people, while our revenues
Yeah.
are as Indian as it gets. So yeah, so we are struggling with another problem altogether. but,
Right.
but anyways, that's a
I mean, I think it's fair, right? Just because you're in India and your cost of living might be lower doesn't mean you're not just as good of an engineer, just as good a product manager, just as good a marketer. So why shouldn't you command a very similar salary to, someone in the US?
But there
I
are two
think this
schools of
is
thought to that. One is, the overall business opportunity in India for a typical business is not generally as large as what you have in this. And it's
sure.
because of the paying capacity of people. The per capita incomes are very low. We are about $2,000 right now, right? So not even there, and that's where the question sort of arises, and you always struggle with this. So while we have great engineers and we have great product people now across the board to build absolutely wonderful companies, but you know, what is their true market worth in this ecosystem is always
Sure. Well, I think that's one of the other questions, right? With
yeah,
a global economy, what does this ecosystem mean,
that's true.
right? Why, if you are a great marketer in India, a great marketer in Bulgaria, a great marketer in Chile, a great marketer in Iceland, does that really matter? Does your location mean all that much? Especially as so many companies, especially in our world, right, in the software as a service world, are going remote first or remote only.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. You're right. It's people have started to talk about this even in India, and I know a few friends who have been sort of toying with that idea. But I'm sure it's a matter of time. Things waiting to happen, and hopefully then we'll have a different, as you said, right, different ecosystem altogether. Cool. Would love to know about the new venture, Rand. And congratulations on raising that round.
Oh,
I
thank you.
discovered yesterday. Priyam told me I wasn't up to speed on that. So congratulations.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very unusual fundraise.
It is a very unusual fundraise. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. So
please, go ahead.
so Avlesh, you're familiar with, right? So Moz raised institutional money from venture capital,
That's right.
which most entrepreneurs are pretty familiar with, right? They know how that works. We raised from big funds. They weren't the most well known in the U.S., but they're fairly well known on the West Coast at least. And with SparkToro, my new company, that is not the case at all.
Yep.
SparkToro raised 1.3 million, so a little bit more than Moz had raised in its first round back in 2007.
Yep.
But we raised from angel investors.
Okay.
So 36 individual people, and they put in between $20,000 and $100,000 each,
Okay.
and that sort of filled out our round. They were mostly people that I knew through my career. A lot of folks like yourself, right, who are CEOs, entrepreneurs, all around the US and in lots of other parts of the world too. A few of them were people I had worked with previously, more directly. And that round is not structured like a venture round where you put in your money and then you hope you get it out when the company sells or goes public. SparkToro actually has this interesting structure, very old school in a way, that lets us pay dividends on our profits.
Oh.
So basically, Avlesh, let's say you went and put in $50,000 into SparkToro. Before we, Casey and I, the founders, could participate in profit sharing, we have to get you back your $50,000.
Right.
So basically the first, 1.3 million in profits goes back to investors like yourself, in the amount that you put in. And then everyone participates pro rata in the profit sharing. Okay. And my hope around this is two things. One, it means that SparkToro does not have to be a massive company to be very successful financially for its founders and investors. Sure. Right? If you get your $50,000 back, and then over the next 5 to 10 years, you make another 50, another 100, another 150,000, you're going to be thrilled, right? Yeah. That's fantastic. And SparkToro doesn't have to make very much money to get you that money back. So we don't need to be a $20 million, $50 million, $100 million a year business. We just have to be relatively profitable and somewhat successful. You talk about, we talked earlier before we got on the interview about making your first $1 million. Right. For SparkToro, that's a huge goal for us, right? That could be very, very successful. For Moz is a company doing, north of $50 million a year in revenue, and it is technically not very successful for its investors because of how venture is structured as an asset class. So that's why we did it this way.
Fair. And how does that move from this world to this world look like? More peaceful as a founder?
Yeah, I would say it's considerably more peaceful and relaxed. Casey and I, my co-founder and I, we certainly have, we have the occasional stressful day. We obviously are working hard and trying our best, but I would not say it's anything like the intensity level or the stress level that a company like Moz or a business that has been venture financed demands. And
after days you miss that intensity, you miss the stress, or
No, not one day. Not one day do I miss that. No, I really don't, because in a lot of ways it felt very arbitrary. Yeah. Right? It was. People often say, I don't know if you hear this in India, but in the United States, there's this like ongoing tagline around how growth for its own sake is the philosophy of cancer.
I hear it all the time.
Right? And that's kind of true when you're in a venture-backed business, because your goal is growth at all costs, right? Growth at the costs of the health and well-being of the team, the sort of happiness of customers, right? If you can make customers less happy, but there's more of them, or they're more likely to stick with you, or they'll pay you more, or hey, we're going to turn off these customers, but we're going to get these new ones. You do it, right? That's what you do.
I agree.
And that's not great for the ecosystem, not great for entrepreneurs, not really great for team members and employees or customers, but it is how it is.
I agree with you. Yeah, venture businesses are designed for a very different outcome, and I think you're right. The stress levels are absolutely different. The kind of things that you're optimizing the outcome for are very, very different. One of the things that makes it very hard is this uh, cramped timeline to do so. I think, right?
Yes.
Everybody wants to build a large business. I think there will be not a single founder who would not want to build something really, really large. Everybody aspires to do so, right? And large is very subjective, right? Large is my large.
Right. Yeah.
But people want to build big businesses, right? Every founder would like to. The funny thing with venture-backed businesses is just the cramped timeline. You have a 5-year window, and now in 5 years you're supposed to do this. What would organically take, let's say, 10 years, right? And that makes it like incredibly hard. But no, good to hear. It's good to hear that you've made the transition and you're very happy in that transition. I love to sort of get that view from founders, because I've seen move from both sides. I've seen founders who are in their first stint who have who generally bootstrapped, built to a certain value, and then went on to their second stint and then raised large sums of money, went on to the other side. For them that was new. Part of it that they enjoy, part of it that they don't, right? So it just.
And I do think I would say I have known a lot of founders who are second or third time founders. If they had some success earlier in their career, and then their venture backed business is their second business, third business. For them, often that the stress level is lower. I think that's because they've been through it before. They're financially comfortable, and they're not stressed about their personal income. They've already had their win, and now they're just, to put it in the American baseball terms that all the venture capitalists seem to use, they're swinging for the fences, and that means that they are very much in alignment with the venture capitalists, right? Because the investors want a certain type of outcome. But my big picture goal with SparkToro is not just to be small and successful for us and for our investors. It's actually to build a model that other people can use, that becomes something that other people who say, I'm not sure that venture is right for me, but I'm also not sure if bootstrapping entirely is right for me. There should be something in between, right? There should be something in the middle. And right now that's a very barren wasteland. There's a few different options, but few and far between. And I want to try and give a lot more entrepreneurs a chance to build a small to medium-sized successful business that returns wealth to them, to their employees, that brings a great product to their customers, and that doesn't have these artificially inorganic growth demands. And I think that's possible.
Yeah, that's a very noble thought, Rand, and I'm glad you're on that route. We'd love to see you succeed, so that it becomes a model for founders to emulate.
And one thing we did do is we open sourced our funding documents. So a few startups have used our model. So if founders are listening and they're like, "What is this SparkToro model Rand's talking about?" You can go ahead and Google it. We've got all the legal docs free for you, so you can use them if you want.
That's very, very sweet of you to do, Rand. Tell us a little bit about SparkToro. What is the business about, and what does it do?
So it's software for marketers, so similar to what I did at Moz, but not in the SEO world, right? SEO is about, hey, which keywords should I be trying to rank for, and how difficult will that be, and how do I make my content better? How do I get more links, all that kind of stuff, right? Fix my errors on my website. SparkToro is really around market research and audience intelligence. So, Avlesh, if you and I said, hey, we need to go reach people who go surfing, right? People who buy surfboards. What do surfers read? What do they watch? What do they listen to? what do they follow? Which YouTube channels do they subscribe to? Which podcasts? What events do they go to? Well, I don't know about you. I don't know the world of surfing at all. I don't know the first thing about it. So, right, for me, it would be a research process, right? What would we do? We'd go interview a bunch of our potential customers, right? We'd probably talk to a bunch of surfers. We'd talk to surfboard store owners. We'd talk to manufacturers. Maybe we'd run some surveys. Perhaps we'd hire a market research or a PR firm to run a big sales study. But what we really want, the data that we really, really want is, okay, what percent of all surfers in, let's say, Hawaii are listening to which podcasts or are subscribing to which YouTube channels? We don't want to know the biggest ones. Yeah. We want to know the ones that our market pays attention to.
That's right.
And that's what SparkToro can tell you. So we basically build this big social and web graph database of tens of millions of profiles that you can query against. So you can say, surfers, Hawaii, here are the social accounts that are most followed by them, the websites most visited by them, the podcasts most listened to by them, the YouTube channels most subscribed to by them. Yeah. And you can do that for any audience in the world, right? If you want to know a political party, if you want to know people who talk about a particular subject, you want to find people who use a hashtag and figure out what they do, you want to plug in one of your competitors and find out who influences your competitor's audience, all that type of data is right there in SparkToro. And we're trying to make it very accessible for folks, smaller and medium-sized marketers and consultants. So it starts at like $150 a month.
Okay, fair point. So a large part of what the Nielsen's of the world are doing in the enterprise space.
Yeah, but we're trying to do it with a primarily technology-based solution, as opposed to so Nielsen obviously has plenty of technology, but it's also at its core, it's a survey firm.
That's correct.
Right? It collects the answers that people give them, and then it also might get a panel and install something on TVs, and hopefully that panel can give insights and that kind of thing. And SparkToro is about collecting the latent data that's already out there.
Oh, okay.
Right? So there are hundreds of thousands, millions of surfers who are on the internet already talking about what they're doing, following brands on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and visiting websites and linking to them and sharing content, right? And through all those signals, we can interpret those, aggregate them, and make them searchable for marketers.
Okay, fair. Now brings me to this second set of question, which I have, Rand, as a founder. How do you get yourself and your team, largely product, or let's say sales, in bigger enterprise category? How do you get these teams ready to fight competition? There will always be competition, right? And tracing back, like when I look back at the Moz story, when you guys started, you had this massive advantage of being the only one out there.
Yeah.
And thanks to whatever you did for building that brand for search engine and putting the focus on search engine, right? It became a thing. Everybody wanted to do it, and that was a great sort of starting point for Moz. But over the years, a lot of people came in that domain. Right?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure it must have gotten difficult for Moz after that.
Oh, yeah.
I want to learn about that phase, right? Did you see it coming? Were you prepared for it? How did you tackle it? How did you sort of maintain it? What would have? I think the larger thing is, looking back, one thing that you would have done better.
That
now that you can look back, right, in hindsight.
Yeah. So I think we saw many, I would say, small players, niche players, kind of entering the SEO software space, but not very many of them who were real competitors until about 2013, 2014.
Okay.
That's when folks like SEMrush and Ahrefs, and people who had been around for a little while, but were getting bigger and more popular and powerful and influential. That even includes, Google Webmaster Tools, which became Google Search Console. That includes Screaming Frog. I would say that some other players like Stat, which Moz ended up buying, but those players started getting powerful at the same time Moz stopped focusing on SEO and tried to go broad and serve a bunch of different web marketing vectors. So that, when we raised our 2012 funding, one of the fears that we had was the SEO market is going to be too small, right? This market will be too small. So we need to also serve PR folks and email marketers and social media marketers and influencer marketing and blah, 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 right? This long list of marketers. And we did that at the worst possible time, right? The worst possible time, because that was, our competitors essentially used those couple of years to catch up to and then leapfrog Moz's core SEO business. And I think, very much so SEMrush, very much so Ahrefs, basically made the pitch to lots of professional SEOs, hey, Moz is taking its eye off of you.
Right.
You should come to us. And a lot of them did, right? A lot of them left Moz, went to those other services. By, I would say, 2015, 2016, Moz was sort of in maybe second or third place. And now today in 2020, Moz is clearly in third place, right? It is behind those two big juggernauts pretty significantly. And there might even be somebody else catching up. I'm not sure who, but those two have clearly overtaken Moz. They use that opportunity. So I think one of the things that is very tempting as a founder is to take your eye off the ball to try and go after a bigger audience. And I think it is a bad thing to do that until you can really afford to almost kind of like incubate a little mini startup inside your company to go, target these newer segments, which I've seen been very successful inside companies like HubSpot or MailChimp or SurveyMonkey, a number of others that sort of served an SMB audience and then, tried to branch out into other ones. Even people like GoDaddy did that, right? And I would urge that approach as opposed to what we did at Moz, which was, hey, let's take our primary product, take a couple years off from building anything for our core customers, and instead try and target this new market. And, I think that really is what cost us the lead.
I hear you. It's a temptation a lot of us fall for.
Yeah.
But
especially if you take money, right? If you have institutional money, you got to go big.
I know. And it's a very tough thing to do, to stay true to the core, to stay focused on it. I think so. The larger question why founders do this, I think it's, if you could prove that the core market itself is large enough and there is opportunity there, maybe untapped, maybe sort of, you need to go deeper into that. Is it very hard to do as a founder to prove that the market segment you're going after and, put a size to it, saying, this is how big it looks like, and I'll continue to go after it, right? That's a seemingly hard thing to do, right?
It is, absolutely. And I think one of the other challenges is if you have, so we had a lot of internal skepticism on the team. And I think that I did not push back as forcefully as I should have. I should have pushed more forcefully with my investors and board of directors. But mostly I should have pushed internally on my team. We had people at the executive level who were kind of like, I don't know about this SEO market. And I should have said, great, I loved working with you. I'm so sorry you don't believe in the market. Go find a company where you believe in it. And let's go recruit people who do believe in this market. And instead I sort of went, oh, shoot, maybe you're right. Maybe there isn't a market here. Like maybe we should broaden and expand, and let me build a team with diverse talent and a bunch of backgrounds. No. I should have recruited more SEO people. surrounded myself with them,
No, in
surrounded
so
the
many
team with
ways,
them.
Rand, hearing this from you is comforting because I know it's bad, and I know it must have been terrible for Moz. But the fact that I'm deriving my comfort from is that the struggle is real. It doesn't
Yeah,
it doesn't only happen in this side of the world.
heck no.
It happens everywhere. So no, it's
Everywhere. I mean, look at the startup failure rates, right? Avlesh, I don't know what it's like in India, right? But
oh,
in the
terrible,
United
absolutely
States,
terrible, absolutely.
yeah, it's terrible. Like I think 95 out of 100
Yeah,
investment-backed firms fail to return the minimum capital requirement.
that's correct. That's correct. It's worth it. It's worth it because the amount of money that's actually going in, mostly in consumer businesses, is insane in this part of the world.
Hmm.
$50 million rounds are not even talked about anymore. It's insane. It's absolutely insane what's happening.
Holy crap.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. 10 years ago, $5 million round was called like a Series A, Series B.
Yeah.
We have 3-4 million seed rounds now. It's
Oh my
and,
God.
and we have 50 million Series A.
It's like San Francisco out there.
Yeah, yeah. It's mad gold rush. A lot of time will tell how much of all of this pans out into real success story. A lot of this money is going into the name of creating a market, which is what is happening right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's how the venture money goes. So let's see.
Well, I think it's times like those, right, that it pays to be the hedgehog, right?
Right.
Just put your head down, focus on your customers, your employees, your team, your market.
Yeah.
Let all those distractions about building a market, scaling inorganically, let them go,
Yeah.
right? And just be focused on building the business that you know that you can build.
I know, and then what's very very obvious to I think both of us. We've spent enough time. We've been through the cycle. I do empathize with the first time founders. Very very
Oh yeah.
tough for them. Very very tough for them to remain focused in an ecosystem like this, where the environment is so frothy. The only thing that gets
Yeah.
talked about is fundraisers, and it's a temptation to fall for, right?
Yeah.
And it's very tough for first time entrepreneurs, especially in India, SEA. If you look at them, uh, their only life's motivation and objective is to get to their next round, and
Yeah.
it's
Hey,
terrible.
I was there, right? I was that same way for years. I don't know if you were reading the Moz blog back in the day, right? But
I know.
every few months I would put out this blog post about like, oh, we tried to raise money and here's how it went. And this is what this entrepreneur life is like.
Yeah.
And I remember friends of mine, friends like Will Reynolds, who runs Seer Interactive and speaks at a lot of events, he'd be like, what? Why are you always trying to raise money?
Yeah.
What? You're making a lot of money from your customers. Why don't you just raise money from them? Why don't you care about profit? And
Well,
hey, what do you know? He was right.
we all learn it the hard way.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think just you have to be in there to realize this. Rand, last few questions from my end. Knowing that we're running this podcast channel for marketers and product managers mostly who focused on retention, um, what are the few things that you think the team at Moz and now in your current business you've done to basically get retention in order? Is it something you worry about later? Focus on customer acquisition, get a few customers, make some money, and then okay, now we'll solve for retention, right? Do you think that way, or is it something that you think on day one? Either way, how do you go about it, and how do you look at it a problem statement? What is the advice for me as a marketer, to solve for retention? What should I be doing?
Yeah. So first off, I think of retention very differently now than I did back when I was at Moz, right? At Moz, there was very much a focus on how do we just keep as many customers for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And the way I think about it now with SparkToro is how do I provide value when people need it?
Okay.
And so my philosophy now is I don't mind churn. I don't mind losing you as a customer as long as I get you back when you need what I have to offer.
Right.
If you don't need what I'm offering, if you don't need to do market research right now, if you're not, expanding your marketing campaigns, why would you pay for SparkToro? Don't pay, right? Quit. Don't subscribe, right? Come back when you need it though. Recommend us when other people have that need. And I think that's the way to build an exciting business, as opposed to the I think that businesses can get overly narrowly focused, especially SaaS, because there's this sort of mentality around churn and retention
And we have
where people get
amazing metrics, and we have cohorts, right? We have
right. We have this perfect funnel, and like we measure all these things, and if we lose someone, they immediately go into they must not have been a right customer bucket, or we did something wrong. Blah. What if you did nothing wrong? What if they just don't need the thing that you offered, but you did a beautiful job for them?
There should be a
You'll never
category said, it should say, I don't know.
Right. Oh, if it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I love WebEngage, Avlesh. It's doing great, but I don't need it right now. But if I need it again, I'll come back to you. Hey, that is a win, right? I think that's a good cancellation, and we just don't have an idea around that. So that's one way to think about it. I think another thing that's really important is to have a cohort of people that you and your team have self-identified.
Yes.
Possibly through interviews and in-person meetings where you say, these are our perfect customers, right? They are doing every month, they're doing the work that should require our product.
Right.
So if we lose them, it's a truly bad sign, right? Because we know they keep doing the work. So let's stay in constant touch with them and always be talking to them about like, hey, what could the product do better? How did we let you down? How did we serve you correctly? What features do you need to stay with us, right? That kind of thing. And I think that's actually, it's really good to have a founder and a CEO who have relationships with at least some of those people, right? 30, 40, 50 of those types of customers on a one-to-one basis. I think it gets dangerous when you separate out leadership from people who touch customers.
Correct. No, that's a very valuable advice. Yes, I totally believe in what you're saying. Okay, perfect. So more word of mouth, more customer evangelism, as compared to just focusing on retention, and as from a metric standpoint.
Yeah, and measurability, right? Because hey, look, we are about to enter a world where privacy means third-party cookies are going away in a ton of places, right? Google Analytics is about to get a lot less valuable to be able to track all these actions across multi-device means that it's way harder to track people. So for all of these reasons, I think we're going to move back to a little bit more of a branding-centric world,
Right.
and that might actually be a healthy thing. Because the metrics obsession, while it can be valuable for incremental progress, it doesn't always give you the big picture.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And, in terms of building word of mouth, of course you have to have a great product, which has to solve for a specific problem, a specific pain. And I think, it starts from there. But there's also this thing about how do you amplify this messaging, right? How do you get people to talk about you? Are there any some of these things as I'm asking Rand, they don't come naturally to a lot of people. It might be very obvious. How do you talk? Like, just talk. How hard could it be?
So one pro tip for earning that amplification, that resonance, is rather than thinking about how do I create something better and better, right? I think a lot of people talk about, I need higher quality content.
Yeah.
Have you been on Twitter or Instagram? It's not about quality. Quality is not the metric. You can get 10 million views and it's not quality, right? That's driving that. There is a component of quality that can go in some virality. But I think what folks who are very good at amplification have identified that many of the rest of us haven't is that you need a target of people who can help your message reach many other people, and you need to have a great incentive, a reason why they will do it.
Yeah.
And if you play to those incentives and play to an amplification likely audience, you are going to do much better than if you just create a lot of content or create quality content or make your content higher quality or use better keywords in it or get more links. No, right? I think that the formula for success in that field is identify people who can amplify, who can help your message reach your target audience or a larger target audience, and then find the motivations that they have for amplification and play to those with the content you create.
Okay, so Priyam has a few that he wanted me to ask you. So I'm going to touch upon those very, very quickly.
Okay. We'll go lightning round.
Oh yes, let's do this. So I think this is coming in from Ashna and basis her research. You talk about you talk a lot about women generally missing in the scene from from the startup ecosystem, especially tech startups, and that's a problem not only in American startups, that's a problem in Indian startups too. We
Sure.
generally don't have enough women across the board, especially in tech, and we all struggle. Even at WebEngage, we struggle. How to solve for that problem. Would love to hear your views on that. And as a founder, as a team, how should one go and try to solve for that problem? How do we get enough women in the ecosystem? And in India, we have another problem altogether: women in the workforce. We don't have enough of them. And we talk about building 5 trillion economy, 10 trillion economy over the next few years. It's not going to happen unless we have women joining forces.
Sure.
Women creating wealth. So it's a large macro issue. Would love to hear your views on this and how do we go about solving this.
Okay, so first thing first, I do not know enough about Indian culture, either just macro level or in tech specifically. I think to be able to intelligently comment on that. However, I will say here in the United States, we obviously have many women in the workforce. We have more college educated women than we do men, and we still have this dearth of women in technology. And I think that most research has shown that is not because of willingness, it is because tech is a generally unfriendly environment. So if you want to attract women, you must, just like if you want to attract customers, you must give customers what they want. If you would like to attract women, you must give women what they want. And women are, generally speaking, looking for some of the same things that men are, which is representation, right? So if I don't see any men being successful in a particular career, I'm not going to think that I can go into it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm not going to pursue it. One of the best ways that I have seen for at least American technology companies to do a great job of attracting a balance of women, of people of color here in the US, is to have those people represented on the executive and founding teams.
Yeah.
So founders, you want to have a huge competitive advantage over all your competitors, start your company with not another dude. Right?
No.
Huge potential win. Huge potential win because right? Because women will look at your company and think you're different. You're not like all those other ones.
Right.
You have a woman CEO. You have a woman co-founder. Oh, that's the kind of team I want to join.
Very valuable. Okay. So it starts at the top.
Starts at the top and starts early. So much harder to make a change if you haven't started early and started at the top.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And the reason we struggle for the same reasons you're saying. Yep, you're right. Absolutely. Cool. So we do this last bit. We call this rapid fire. I'm just going to shoot a few questions. Whatever comes to your mind, let's just go about it.
Sweet.
Top 3 things you shouldn't do while building your personal brand.
Top 3 things. I would not build a brand being a butt. Do not be mean to other people. I would not build a brand. I would not build my personal brand exclusively on one platform, because that platform can easily take it away, right? Or change their algorithm, and then you're visible to no one. And I would not build my personal brand in a way that is, unless I were confident that I wanted to be with that company for a very long time.
Okay.
Right. So if you're building to sell, personal brand, not as good.
Makes absolute sense. Okay. The top events you're going to attend in 2020.
Ooh, gosh, I am slowing down my event calendar significantly, but I can tell you a couple. I am going to Search Love in New York. I'm going to be at Ira's MKGO event in outside of London in a few months here. Let's see, I will be at Unbounce's CTA conference in Vancouver in Canada in June. Yeah, there's a few other ones. I've got a list on the website, but those 3 come to mind real quick.
The last book that you read, the last good book that you read.
The last good book that I read. Oh gosh, I loved Liz and Molly is the name of the authors. They have a couple of things they put out, but one of the One of the books that I recently read was called No Hard Feelings.
Oh.
I loved it. I just thought it was so fantastically well written, and it's really fun. There's a bunch of comics in there. It's all about work life and resonated with me.
Your favorite holiday destination?
Favorite holiday destination? Okay, my favorite holiday is Halloween. I don't know. Do you have Halloween in India?
We celebrate it now, yes.
Yeah, it's starting to become a thing. In my opinion, you know, America has introduced a lot of terrible things to the world. Truly, Kentucky Fried Chicken, like that was a mistake.
Absolutely.
Taco Bell, I'm really sorry for that, right?
Oh, no,
but
I love tacos, but yeah.
Halloween is great. And I think the best place to be on Halloween is New York City, because that town just turns insane. The streets are just filled with people in wild costumes of every kind. It is hard to imagine having a crazier night than New York on Halloween.
New York on Halloween. All right, super. One downside of being famous or being somebody like a Ryan Fishkin.
Oh gosh. Okay, so first off, I am not famous. I rarely ever get recognized. Maybe like once every couple of weeks, someone will be like, "Oh, I know you from Whiteboard Friday" or whatever. I think the biggest downside of getting truly famous is that you have, I don't even think it's the lack of privacy. I think it's the lack of flexibility to be given the benefit of the doubt. I think people don't give you the benefit of the doubt that you have good intentions. And that really sucks.
Tell me about it.
I have that a little bit. I have that just a little bit, and it kind of sucks, right? When I see people on Twitter who just assume that whatever phrasing I chose for my tweet is the least ideal one, as opposed to potentially the most ideal.
Tell me about it. Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft. If one were to go down or fail, which one would it be, as per you?
I think the riskiest one of those four feels like Facebook to me. I think people could pretty easily replace Facebook with any other social network and not lose a whole lot. Yeah. Google maybe is second, then Microsoft and Amazon maybe are relatively tied. Yeah. Microsoft is so embedded into kind of the world's infrastructure, business infrastructure, hardware infrastructure, that'd be really hard. And Amazon with AWS and with every package they deliver, that would be very hard to lose too.
All done. Last question, Rand. I would love to get some advice from you for fellow entrepreneurs across the globe listening to this. If you had to give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
One piece of advice. Don't let your media ecosystem, right? The water that you're swimming in, the press that you're listening to, don't let that dictate what you want. Choose for yourself. Choose for yourself what kind of life, what kind of business, what kind of people you want to work with, what kind of partnerships you want, what kind of romantic partner you want. All of that, choose for yourself. Don't let the rest of society's ecosystem decide that for you. That is a hard thing to do, but if you do, you'll be so much happier.
Very, very valuable, Rand. We come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much. This has been incredibly wonderful. I've enjoyed it personally a lot. I'm sure the audience will too. Thank you so much for taking time.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Avlesh. Take care.